910, Big 550, KTRS. We welcome in the audience who was watching on 11.2, KPLR Channel 11. That is Channel 187 on Charter, and it's Channel 11.2 if you're watching in HD over your antenna. Also, you can watch us at stltoday.com. Go to the opinion tab. Also at ktrs.com on our phone app. And, of course, the phone app's great. One app, one radio station. Just go to your app store, search KTRS, hit download. It'll show up on your screen. Hit it, and then in mere moments, you'll be able to listen to the Big 550 KTRS anywhere in the world. And, of course, as always, on the Big 550 KTRS. Lots of talk over the last couple of weeks and years on the show about what's going on with the Bridgeton landfill. And we've talked a little bit about what's going on in Weldon Springs. But Coldwater Creek is sort of not really gotten as much of attention recently as maybe it should. So to talk about it is Janelle Wright. Janelle, you are on the Big 550 KTRS. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining us, and thanks for spending a couple of minutes. Now, when some people say Coldwater Creek, they think of a store in a mall that sold women's clothing.
Yes, we've run into that quite a bit. That's true.
Coldwater Creek went out of business. I think the stores went out of business. But what is Coldwater Creek in North County?
Coldwater Creek in North County originates just a little bit south of the airport in the St. Anne area, Overland area. It starts there, and quite unusually to most of us who live here, it actually flows north. Just because of the way the topography of the land, and it flows north down to the Missouri River. Before it hits the Missouri River, however, it winds extensively. It's over 16 miles long and meanders under the airport, and then comes out on the other side, and it twists and turns through Hazelwood, Florissant, Blackjack, unincorporated North St. Louis County, all the way out to the Missouri River. It goes under Lindbergh a few times, and it really twists and turns throughout the North County area.
How close does it get to the Bridgeton landfill?
The watershed of the Coldwater Creek watershed is supplied to us from the Missouri Division of Natural Resources. It appears that it might actually interface somewhat with the Bridgeton landfill or be very close to being in that same area.
Right.
We'd need to actually have them lay the landfill, so to speak, over their watershed map. But it's all very commingled when you start looking at it from an aerial standpoint.
And we know that the Bridgeton landfill, they don't really know where they put all that nuclear waste.
Exactly.
Is it this now? What contaminated? It's the same thing that contaminated the Bridgeton landfill contaminated Coldwater Creek, correct?
Yes, we're kind of the mothership, if you will, and we consider Westlake our child or legacy, if you will. This all stems from our country's Manhattan Project and the mad race to purify uranium as quickly as possible. And St. Louis played a very pivotal, important part of that process in that project. And downtown, it was called the St. Louis Downtown Site, and it's not far from the McKinley Bridge, and Mallinckrodt still has a facility there now. That's where the majority of the purification of uranium was taking place. There were also activities at other locations, like you mentioned, Weldon Spring. But in particular, the downtown site was just making this, purifying uranium and working with uranium 24/7, it sounds like, from what, we can gather now, and producing waste that just so fast they didn't know what to do with it. They first started trucking it in barrels. They would put it in barrels and seal it and bring it to an area the government has dubbed SLAP, which stands for the St. Louis Airport Site, and it's just north of the airport. It sits adjacent to the creek, so every time it rains, the stuff will leak into the creek. It also is close to where Boeing now is located, and many other industrial area, or many other companies that are in that industrial area. But at any rate, they first started shipping these barrels to this area near the airport, and then they were just making so much so quickly, they didn't have time to put the nuclear weapons waste, which, again, the contaminants to answer that question in this answer includes uranium, radium, and thorium, thorium-230, in particular. So anyway, then they started just putting this stuff in their trucks, and it looks just like dirt. I mean, it's part of the earth.
Right.
The waste looks like dirt. People, the drivers don't even really know what they're dealing with, and they're paid by the load to dump it in this area in North County. So you have open air trucks delivering this material around the clock, again, to this area that's north of the airport and directly right by Coldwater Creek, and then over time, again, we don't even have barrels. So every time it rains, it's washing in the creek. Every time the wind blows, these particulates, they fly through the wind. I mean, these are carried, a conservative estimate is 7 to 10 miles. Thorium-230 can travel in the wind. So we're very fortunate to have the wind records of Lambert Airport right there, and you can kind of see where this stuff probably was carried in the wind over the years. It's sat out. This is a problem that's 60 years old, so it's really moved about quite a bit because, again, the fine particulates, and it's inhalable. The big issue that we're finding with our concerns would be that people have been and possibly still are inhaling tiny particulates of these radionuclides, in particular the alpha emitter thorium-230, which if you read about what happens to somebody who's inhaled thorium-230 and you look at our diseases that people have been supplying to our group, our 10,000-member Facebook group, Coldwater Creek, Just the Facts, Please. We have a health survey, and we've had overwhelming response to our health survey with folks with every kind of disease that you can link. Almost all of them, the cancers, the autoimmune diseases, as well as extensive birth defects and a lot of female problems. Anyway, all of those can be linked to exposure to these radionuclides. So we're kind of...
Yeah, Janelle. Yeah, I hear you. Let me step in here so you can take a breath and get a drink of water and reload for a second. Janelle Wright is with us. You are the founder of this Facebook page called Coldwater Creek, Just the Facts. We should also say that you're a CPA. You were a CPA at Ernst & Young. You worked as a financial executive for Jones Pharma, and you are the corporate comptroller for King Pharmaceuticals. So your background is in money and finance. And how did you get involved in this? Did you grow up in North County?
I did. I lived in Florissant for 27 years. Very proud Florissant native and North County native. Had a fabulous childhood. Grew up there. And what started happening was just getting back in touch with people that life takes you in different directions from your friends you grow up with sometimes. Getting back in touch with people on Facebook in particular. An explosion of everyone reconnecting, and then reconnecting and finding just tragedy upon tragedy with what's happened to people and their health and their offspring. And it got to the point where I'd say several of us, myself being a former auditor, I relied a lot on my sixth sense. Something is not right here. This is not normal. These people who have fallen so ill, so young, these were bright people who I knew in childhood. They were not abusing their bodies or doing things they shouldn't have been doing that would bring upon cancers and birth defects. And then you just start digging what in the world could be happening here to all the people that I grew up with and their family members, everyone from maybe your music teacher to church members to your softball buddies, and it's just, every circle of friends, you notice the same diseases popping up before 40 years old or around 40 years old. You start to scratch your head.
Right. All right. So I thought they were cleaning Coldwater Creek up.
They are cleaning it up. And this meeting that's going to occur on Thursday, it's the St. Louis Foods Wrap Oversight Committee that's asking Foods Wrap to give a presentation to the public on where they're at in the cleanup. A lot of people are not familiar that there's even any nuclear waste anywhere in St. Louis. They're still learning about it. And this program has quietly, this Foods Wrap program, which is part of the Army Corps of Engineers, they have been cleaning this up, and they have a document that was authorized by Congress and passed by Congress, and they're funded by Congress, and the document that kind of rules what they're doing is called the 2005 Record of Decision. So on Thursday night, the Foods Wrap people are going to come forward and share with us where they are in the process of following that document for remediating what they knew at that time when they made that document in 2005.
So are you expecting anything nefarious to come out?
Well, I think that basically, I think FISREP is doing a fabulous job. It's taking very long. I mean, they've been working on this from 2005 on, and they still have not really worked much past Highway 270. Again, thinking about the map and thinking about this creek, the originating piles that were near the airport, there were just tons and tons of of this material. They've done an awesome job of starting the remediation of that. But this is all migrated in the creek. We have tests showing we have thorium-230 in the creek, and this goes all the way to the Missouri River. And they have only gotten to Highway 270 and a little bit north of there, and we have miles and miles and miles to go. And the issue that we want to make sure people understand is that right now, the document I mentioned from 2005 only covers the 10-year floodplain of that creek. And from living there almost 30 years, I can attest to the fact that creek, when it floods, which isn't maybe every 10 years, but it does flood very substantially throughout most of the area. And it's in a lot of the homes. The creek has backed up into a lot of the homes. And as of right now, their plan to remediate does not include testing where we know all the water has gone from having lived there and growing up there. And it does not include getting in people's houses to ensure that there would not be any remnants of this contaminated floodwater in their homes.
Let me ask you this question, because the state has come in, and I know a lot of people don't have a lot of faith in the state of Missouri and what's going on these days, but the state came in and said, hey, wait a minute. Even though you have anecdotal evidence of all of these cancers and friends and relatives, that's not an official study. So the state came in and did an official study and said there is no spike in cancers in that area.
Well, that was their first look at it, their first pass, and big picture is that study was uninformative because it failed to account for mobility. For instance, everybody I grew up with is not living with their parents in their basement anymore. They have lived there for 20 to 25 years, go off to college, get a job, get married, whatever. They move out of their parents' home. So they failed to take that into consideration, and the mobility is quite high, as the world has seen with Ferguson. There's been a lot of turnover in some of these North County communities. So the picture is you have new houses built in the 50s and 60s. You have all these people flocking to these brand new homes. They live there for 20 to 30 years. They raise their family, and then those children, move on.
Sure.
What we have is extremely special. We have, information on what happened to the babies that were born in those houses, to those children as they, grew. And the state understands that it was completely, it was basically a useless study, and we call it uninformative is the proper word to use, I suppose. But what's happened, and maybe you're not aware of it, is the state came back in September of this year. They responded to our criticisms, and they said, look, we are not trying to drive you crazy. We don't have the ability to study this. It just doesn't exist. It's not that we are trying, again, to be difficult.
So the state told you they couldn't study it, but you, as a private individual citizen, you were able to get this information.
Well, we were able to get all of this information, and it's not blessed, if you will, by certain epidemiologists. And so right now we are working with the St. Louis County Department of Health to devise a proper epidemiological study that would look at this and account for the mobility of the population that was very stable for a long time, because it's an excellent, the EPIs are very excited to look at this because it's such a fascinating project, because we have data that nobody else anywhere in the world has been able to track down to the extent we have the babies. And one other thing I need to add, that State of Missouri health report you mentioned that said there was not a problem, that was updated in September, and there was a massive problem. I received a call from one of the top people at the Missouri Department of Health on a Friday to meet with them the following Monday morning, to drop everything and meet them in St. Louis. They came and they shared with our group that they added a couple more years onto the study. Again, still can't account for mobility, but added a few years, and they found there were indeed much above what they expected levels of certain cancers: leukemia, breast cancer, kidney cancer, bladder cancer, colon cancer. All of those cancers I just mentioned, and those were in adults, all of those cancers are linked to exposure to ionizing radiation. Mm-hmm. And also wrapped up in that same study, we pulled in the Bridgeton zip code that had the elevated amount of brain cancer and brain tumors in children that maybe you've talked about with the Westlake people, that came from the same revised health study from the state. So they have recognized there is a massive problem because this does not happen every day.
Janelle Wright, quickly, you have this meeting on Thursday night. I guess you can find out more at the Facebook page, Coldwater Creek. Just the facts, please.
Yes, coldwatercreekfacts.com on the internet. Again, www.coldwatercreekfacts.com. And also, if you're a member of Facebook, you can go to the Facebook group called Coldwater Creek, Just the Facts, Please. But it's this Thursday, 7 p.m. in Hazelwood, and we warmly attend current residents, former residents, people who worked there, a lot of Boeing employees, for instance, and anyone else who's interested at all to please consider attending this meeting and asking questions to Sue's Rap.
You know what, the difference, well, I don't know, I'm sure there's lots of differences, but what sitting here, watching this, listening to these people, listening to you and others, Coldwater Creek is being fixed up. Might take longer, might take years and decades, but the Bridgeton landfill, they're not even talking about cleaning that up. So Coldwater Creek is in a better position, it seems like, than the Bridgeton landfill.
Currently, I would agree with that, although we have a lot more testing that needs to take place because, again, the plans that they made in 2005, we don't know that they were aware of the extensive flooding, but us natives saw children that's beyond what they're considering.
Coldwater Creek, there isn't a fire burning out of control next to the creek, I guess.
No, thankfully, no.
Yeah, all right, good.
But we have water migration, which, again, when the dust particles dry and you inhale them, can cause serious illness.
Janelle Wright, the Facebook founder of Coldwater Creek, Just the Facts, Please, and coldwatercreekfacts.org. Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Coldwatercreekfacts.com. I was going to say I was not the original founder of the group, but one of the early people early on who got very involved.
Certainly understandable. Janelle Wright, thank you for your time. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
You got it. 9:27 here.